Heaven Official's Blessing. Chapter 44. Audio source: WuShouWorldAudiobook.com. Paradise to Ashes: The Second Coming of Feng Xin. Xie Lian didn't think Shi Qingshan would suddenly light a fire and didn't even have the time to stop him before it was too late. The flames were exceedingly bright and revealed the silhouette of a black-clad man. The man in black had his head hung low against the stone wall at the end of the path, his face as white as a sheet, his hair a mess. But underneath that unkemptness was a pair of eyes that shone with determination, like burning ice. Although he sat cross-legged without a trace of discomfort, the stench of thick blood in the air indicated he was gravely wounded, and was obviously imprisoned here. His "I have nothing to say" was probably him mistaking them for interrogators. Shi Qingshan saw his face and cried, "It's you." That man didn't seem to expect other people either and was taken aback, looking like he wanted to say, "It's you, too," but alas, held back. Xie Lian calmed the Rui that was ready to attack. "So you two know each other?" After crossing so many hurdles and found someone, Shi Qingshan looked relieved and was about to respond when that man cut in and said in an indisputable tone, "I don't know him." Shi Qingshan raged at those words and pointed at him with his fan. "Is it so shameful to know me?" "What hurtful words, Ming Shang." "One, I'm your best friend." The man denied it resolutely. "I have no friends that would run around in that sort of attire." Shi Qingshan was still in his ragged purple silk dress, truly a shameful sight. Xie Lian wanted to laugh and thought there's really people in this world who would use someone's best friend to validate themselves. It's definitely Shi Qingshan's style. But Ming Shang, if he remembers correctly, of the 5 elemental masters, the Earth Master's name was Mingyi. Xie Lian spoke up. "Are you perhaps the Lord Earth Master?" "It's him. You've met before," Shi Qingshan replied. Xie Lian looked Mingyi over and said, "Have we?" He didn't recall ever meeting such a character. "You have," Shi Qingshan said. "We haven't," Mingyi stated. "Yes, you have," Shi Qingshan said exasperatedly. "Last time at the Banyu Pass. You guys didn't forget that fast, did you?" Seeing Mingyi's face go from pale white to grim, Xie Lian finally remembered. Last time when they met at the Banyu Pass, wasn't there a black-clad lady next to Shi Qingshan? Hua Cheng already told him at the time that that wasn't the Water Master, but must also be one of the 5 elemental masters. As expected, Shi Qingshan was not only passionate about transforming into his female form, he's also passionate about dragging others into doing the same. No wonder the black-clad lady at the time looked extremely pissed and disgusted. Thinking back on how Shi Qingshan begged him to join in the fun, Xie Lian sighed, thinking that was close, and was glad he didn't relent. "Lord Earth Master, was the ascending fire dragon set forth by you?" Xie Lian asked. "It was," Mingyi answered. "They found the right person." Xie Lian nodded and said, "The Lord Earth Master is probably heavily wounded. We best make our escape now and talk later." Without any prompt, Shi Qingshan knelt down and carried Mingyi on his back. "Then let's get out of here." The 3 retraced their steps and Shi Qingshan talked as he walked. "I say, Ming Shang, aren't you good at fighting? You were perfectly fine back at the Banyu Pass, so how did you get beat up this bad in just several days? How did you piss off that Crimson Rain sought flower?" His tone was a teasing taunt, and Xie Lian mentally noted, fearless of getting punched in the face. That's definitely the way to talk to a good friend. Mingyi looked like he's had enough of listening to Shi Qingshan talk and only said, "Shut up." Xie Lian also wanted to know the answer to the same question, but changed his wording. "Lord Earth Master, why would Hua Cheng want to provoke you?" Mingyi didn't tell him to shut up, but didn't answer either. Xie Lian turned his head slightly to look at him and saw he had his eyes closed. After having been imprisoned and interrogated for days and heavily wounded, Mingyi must have finally let down his guard after being rescued and could relax at last. It wasn't anything urgent anyway, so Xie Lian didn't try to wake him. The three ran up the stairs and Xie Lian threw out his dice at the top. He didn't know what number he tossed out in the dark, only that before them came a soft creaking sound, and a crack of light appeared. Xie Lian pushed at the door and was just thinking whether if he'd have the chance to take Lang Ying away too when he realized the first step his took was hollow. The moment he felt himself fall forward, he cried, "Don't come out!" Xie Lian flipped in the air and fell on something hard. He was just feeling relieved that it wasn't some bladed mountain or a sea of fire he fell into when he raised his head and realized a bladed mountain or a sea of fire might have been a better alternative. Hua Cheng's exceptionally handsome face was inches away from his brows raised, looking at him. This time when the stone door opened, his hollowed step made him fall on top of Hua Cheng. The place of his fall was the armory. Hua Cheng was seated on the throne of the armory, composedly wiping the scimitar Yi Ming. Even when someone suddenly fell on top of him from above, he'd only move his hands away and stop the cleaning without an air of surprise. He calmly looked at Xie Lian, as if waiting for an explanation. Of course Xie Lian had none, and could only lay in his lap and stare back boldly. Suddenly, he saw another person at the peripheral of his vision, and when he turned around, he saw it was Lang Ying. That bandaged boy was sitting on the floor looking frightened, his hands grabbing his head, staring at the two of them. Why was Lang Ying here too? It looked as if Hua Cheng was interrogating him. And when Xie Lian's eyes moved upwards, he saw half of Shi Qingshan's white boot stepping out. There wasn't time to think, and in a hurry, Xie Lian gripped Hua Cheng's shoulders. "I'm sorry," Xie Lian cried, then pushed Hua Cheng aside. This push threw Hua Cheng over a meter away and he even tumbled a couple times. After tumbling, Hua Cheng immediately stood and steadied himself, and by then Shi Qingshan, carrying Mingyi, already jumped and landed with ease the same spot Hua Cheng was just sitting. Xie Lian boldly looked back, and Hua Cheng was still looking at him without a word, but his brows were raised higher. Xie Lian leapt to his feet and backed off a few feet, apologizing as he did so. I'm sorry. Lang Ying ran towards Xie Lian while watching Hua Cheng, still appearing quite afraid, and hid behind him. Xie Lian shielded him and said, "San Lang, allow me to explain." "I'm waiting," Hua Cheng responded. "Wait, isn't it the opposite?" Shi Qingshan spoke up. "He should be the one who owes you an explanation. He's the one responsible for the missing heavenly official." "Be wary, Your Highness." This was exactly the situation Xie Lian didn't want to face. He looked at Hua Cheng intently. "San Lang, I don't know what the misunderstanding was between you and the Lord Earth Master, but let's all calm down and talk this out. The best case scenario would be Hua Cheng letting them go without harm. Although the Earth Master was wounded, his life was not at stake and he wasn't missing any limbs. If he could drop it, then all of this wouldn't have to devolve to the worst extreme case. If Hua Cheng let them leave and they report back to the heavens, then they'd be in his debt and Xie Lian could use it as a chance to ask Zhen Wu to dismiss the whole thing. However, Hua Cheng said instead, "Earth Master." "What Earth Master?" After a pause, he continued. "Oh, did you mean the one the Wind Master is carrying? He's nothing more than an inept subordinate of mine." Hearing this, both Xie Lian and Shi Qingshan were taken aback. "He's obviously one of our heavenly official. How dare you say otherwise?" Shi Qingshan said. Hua Cheng laughed. "Then, I wonder why your honorable heavenly official would hide his identity, drop his respectable title, and come work as an officer under me." Hua Cheng drew out Yi Ming in a flash of crescent moon. "If that is truly the Earth Master, then what patience to put on an act for 10 years. In the past 10 years I had thought him suspicious from time to time, but there was no proof. If it wasn't for bumping into him and the Wind Master at Banyu, I'd still be in the clouds." In that moment Xie Lian understood everything. So that's what happened. The Earth Master went missing and was imprisoned ultimately because he had hidden his true identity 10 years ago to go undercover as a demon officer under Hua Cheng. In other words, he was a spy. Hua Cheng had thought his actions surreptitious, but without concrete evidence, he'd only kept him under his watch. And it was only recently that Hua Cheng finally uncovered his identity as the Earth Master. During that journey to the Banyu Pass, Hua Cheng had seen the Earth Master next to the Wind Master, even under the disguise of a woman. Thanks to the Wind Master, Hua Cheng still saw beneath that fake skin, and discovered the black-clad lady was the demon officer he suspected, and locked his identity on as one of the 5 elemental masters. After the whole ordeal at Banyu had concluded, Hua Cheng probably left Puchi Shrine to go conclude things with the Earthmaster. It may have been during Hua Cheng's pursuit to kill, while under dire circumstances, that Ming Yi set off the distress signal. Then, Zhen Wu summoned Xie Lian and gave him the mission to run this rescue. That a heavenly official did not mind his duties but went undercover in the ghost realm for over a decade was quite the scandal. Never mind the politics behind it. If Mingyi was to remain imprisoned and tortured, if he was to actually die under Hua Cheng's hands, then all heaven would break loose. It would be absolute chaos in the world. If that day were to come, no one would be spared. After thinking all this through, Xie Lian could only say, "I understand that the fault is ours. But, San Liang, I hope you will let us go this time around." Hua Cheng watched him intently, and after a moment, said in a calm tone, "Your Highness, some things are best not to be involved in too much." Suddenly, Shi Qingshan cried from the side, "Wind, come to me." The moment the fan came out, wild gusts started blowing through the armory. The many weapons hung on the walls and on the shelves started rattling. "Lord Wind Master, we haven't done anything yet?" Xie Lian said, alarmed. "I don't think either of you are going to make a move first," Shi Qingshan said. "So I'll be the bad guy this time. Wind, W-I-I-I-N-N-N-D-D-D, come to me." There was a huge cracking sound, and Xie Lian could feel layers of dust falling on his head from above. He raised his head and saw that it was the roof that was being raised by the gusts, breaking at the seams into a large crack. The armory had no windows or other visible exits, and Shi Qingshan had no intention to fight but to escape through the crack of the roof. Within the mad gales, Hua Cheng's raven black hair and maple red clothes flew wildly with the winds, but his person never moved. He smirked. "You have a fan, and coincidentally, so do I." From one of the many shelves, Hua Cheng retrieved a fan. It was small and intricate, its spine and leaf made of pure gold, serene and beautiful. Hua Cheng twirled it in his hand, snapping it open. He grinned wordlessly, elegant amidst his murderous aura. He flipped his hand and fanned, and a strong gust shot towards them with a blinding silver flash. The 3 dodged and heard behind them the sound of hail like darts smashing against the walls and ground. When they turned their heads to see, it was long rows upon rows of golden foils nailed to the ground. Each foil thin but deeply embedded, its sharpness apparent and vicious. Each weapon within this armory was a treasure to behold. A simple hand could have such murderous effect. Hua Cheng flipped his hand again and the other golden gust blew. The winds called forth by Shi Qingshan was strong, but the stronger it was, the more dangerous the situation becomes. The armory was a mere chamber, its room limited. A portion of the winds raised by the Wind Master fan would rebound around the interior, hauling the golden foils along, dancing in this madness. Xie Lian was afraid the golden foils would harm people, shielded Ling Ying and cried, "Lord Wind Master, please stop for now." The golden foils had always brushed closely against the Shi Qingshan and Ming Yi. Shi Qingshan wanted to stop too, however the roof had been raised by his winds, revealing a crack, and if he should stop now all of his efforts would go to waste. Just then the golden foils encircling them suddenly flew upwards uniformly. There was a cacophony of crackling before a person broke through the roof and jumped through the crack, debris and dust coming down with him. The moment he landed, the person shouted, "Lord Wind Master, I apologize but I just couldn't sit still anymore." Shi Qingshan was overjoyed. Qianchu, you've come in the nick of time. That young man carried a longsword, its blade the size of a grown man's palm. It was indeed Lang Qianchu. His longsword was a shimmering gold. But looking at it closely, it wasn't because his sword was golden, but because it sucked up all the golden foils, covering the blade completely, making it look as if it was a golden sword. Lang Qianchu's longsword was forged by a curious metal born of a lodestone mountain and had the ability to magnetize metals, as long as the object of suction did not exceed a certain level of spiritual power. Once he had the sword in hand, he could mentally release its ability and magnetize all surrounding metals, melting it into his blade. Sure enough, soon the innumerous golden foils were all sucked into the sword and dissolved into the blade. Seeing this, Hua Cheng laughed out loud, closed his fan and threw it away behind him. Are the heavenly officials so pathetically poor that they couldn't let a teeny bit of gold go? If those words were directed at Xie Lian, he would only pretend not to have heard them. But they were directed at Lang Qianchu, a noble born of royalty. He hadn't cared for riches his entire life, and although he knew the enemy was intentionally taunting him, he was still boiling with rage. He raised his sword with both his hands and struck towards Hua Cheng. Hua Cheng drew out his scimitar with one hand, generating silver shimmers in the air, calmly ready to welcome the attack. Lang Qianchu's strike used all of his power. He was born a charging bull, fearless of tigers, but Xie Lian had clearly seen the difference between their strengths, and if this strike was to land, he will die for sure. On the sidelines, even Shi Qingshan, who was no swordsman, watched with alarm and yelled, "Qianchu, don't!" But in that split second, how could a shout stop the arrow that's left the bow? Just as the blades of a sword and a scimitar was about to make contact, a blinding white light blew up within the armory. It was a light so immense it covered every inch of the armory, and everyone lost their sight temporarily. All they could see was white. Xie Lian, however, was prepared, and could somewhat see. His right hand gathered all of the powers he borrowed from Shi Qingshan and created a giant flame and blazed it towards a random direction. A corner of the armory immediately caught on fire. Soon after, Xie Lian released Rui, wrapped himself, Shi Qingshan, Mingyi, Lang Qianchu, and Lang Ying, and shouted, "Lord Windmaster, blow us upwards." Even though Shi Qingshan couldn't open his eyes, he still followed Xie Lian's direction. He raised his fan and snapped downwards, and a violent twister formed from flat ground, blowing towards the ceiling and at last broke through the shaky roof. Rui had the 5 of them in a bundle and flew towards the sky. In mid-air, sight finally returned to many of them, and Shi Qingshan could see down below them giant flames ablaze, black smoke heavy in the air. The armory was burning. He was afraid Hua Cheng would give chase and flapped his fan. Now it really became fanning the flame. The blaze instantly erupted in size, and kindles landed on all the nearby buildings. Now over half of Paradise Manor was ablaze. With great difficulty, Xie Lian finally grabbed hold of the Shi Qingshan, who was fanning with all his might. "Lord Windmaster, please stop fanning. The whole place is going to burn down." Startled, Shi Qingshan cried, all right, I'm stopping. Let me go, Your Highness, your grip is too strong." It wasn't until the Windmaster stopped his winds that Xie Lian let go. He looked down, and amidst the red flames, Xie Lian was still able to spot a crimson silhouette. They were too high in the sky and he couldn't see clearly, but his gut instinct told him that in that moment in time, Hua Cheng was standing there watching him. He didn't give chase and didn't put out the flames. He only stood there, letting the wildfires devour capriciously. Outside the Paradise Manor, screams and howling roared from all over the Ghost City streets, and crowds of ghosts and demons ran amok. Xie Lian couldn't breathe, and his voice cracked, mumbling to himself. Only wanted to start a small fire to create a distraction. How did it turn out like this? It was only earlier that Hua Cheng had leaned against the doors of that armory. half-jokingly telling him he wanted to gift him the entire armory with every weapon inside, but now everything was engulfed in a sea of fire. Although there may be many golden devices that were unafraid of intense heat, there were surely also many that could not touch flames. After all this burning, many treasures would become ashes. Xie Lian had not expected the flames to grow so violently, devouring the entire Paradise Manor. Even if Hua Cheng didn't consider it a home, it was still his residence. Seeing how crushed Xie Lian was, Shi Qingshan also felt bad. I'm really sorry, Your Highness. I didn't think things through and only wanted to escape faster. This is all my fault. It was most definitely only a small flame at first. If the Crimson Rain Sod Flower comes knocking for paybacks, you just tell him to come to me. Don't worry, I can pay whatever amount. Money is never an issue. But money was definitely not the issue. Xie Lian closed his eyes and couldn't speak. Shi Qingshan patted his shoulder in consolation but suddenly felt wetness in his palm and a strange, stark smell of blood. He turned his head to see and his face lost color. Your Highness, what happened to your hand? Xie Lian's right hand was covered in blood. His entire right arm was thoroughly dyed with blood, and the trembling was not slight. Yet both his hands still sternly held onto that white silk band to keep everyone from getting blown apart by the wild winds. What's going on with you? Shi Qingshan cried. Xie Lian blinked back and strained to steady himself before shaking his head. It's nothing. Just a small injury. It'll get better once we get back. That white light was you? Shi Qingshan remembered. Your Highness, you broke those two off? I'm a swordsman after all, Xie Lian replied. Shi Qingshan had guessed right. Right then, when the blades of Hua Cheng and Lang Qianchu were about to make contact, Xie Lian flashed in. He picked up a sword from the pile of weapons on the shelves and made two moves between the sword and the scimitar. The first move, he knocked back Lang Qianchu's long sword. The second move, he blocked the scimitar Yi Ming. The strength of those two moves were not only powerful, but extremely well controlled. Even when Xie Lian blocked both blades, the force of the strikes were not rebounded onto the attackers. Because with Xie Lian sandwiched in the middle, he used his sword and his own arm to absorb both attacks completely. Lang Qianchu's long sword was manageable, but Hua Cheng's scimitar was a force to be reckoned with. The sword Xie Lian used was one from Hua Cheng's collection, so naturally it was also a formidable blade. When the two blades met, it blasted the blinding white light. With the two moves, the first strike against Lang Qianchu's longsword created a crack, and the second strike against the scimitar Yi Ming shattered the sword to pieces. All of this was done within a fraction of a second, faster than the eye could see. Shi Qingshan looked at the miserable state of Xie Lian's right hand, the whole right arm a bloody mess, and commented, Your Highness, you're way too intense. I can't believe you blocked them single-handedly. The Flower Crown Martial God. Sword in one hand, flower in the other. Shi Qingshan only remembered the flower, but had forgotten. Xie Lian ascended because of his sword. Thinking back on how close of a call it was, Shi Qingshan's heart was still racing. Thank goodness Your Highness had the moves, otherwise who knows how many pieces Lang Qianchu would be cut by Hua Cheng. The strange thing was, next to them Lang Qianchu appeared to be unharmed, but his expression was frozen, like his soul had left his body. Qianchu, Shi Qingshan called. Qianchu, are you alright? Wake up. What's with you? Have your sight not returned yet? Riding on tailwind, the group of them finally reached the heavenly capital. Dragging and carrying, they rushed past the Ascension gates and ran straight for the Great Martial Hall. Lang Ying couldn't enter the hall, so Xie Lian settled him in a small side chamber. No one seemed to be on duty, so he called within the spirit communication array. Is any honorable official here? Please everyone, come quickly to the Great Martial Hall. It's an emergency, we have a wounded official. As he shouted, next to him Shi Qingshan snapped his fingers and switched back to his white cultivator robe, and released 100,000 merits. It's two wounded officials, Xie Lian said hurriedly. Lord Windmaster, don't be so excited. We can just talk, there's no need to release any merits. Everyone will naturally come. No, Your Highness, Shi Qingshan said. You have to know, spreading merits works faster than talking by 100 times. Soon enough, a voice came from afar. Who's wounded? When the word "who" was uttered, the voice was still far away, but by the last word the person had appeared, and it was Feng Xin. He entered the hall and looked at Xie Lian, then at Lang Qianchu, his face faltering. I'm fine, but the Lord Earthmaster seemed to be heavily wounded, Xie Lian said. So what? Another voice came. There's so many heavenly officials. Whoever returned unscathed after each round of patrol. The voice was decorous and mellow, but the words sharp. It was Mu Qing. He crossed into the great hall and also took a look at Xie Lian, then at Lang Qianchu. Yet his expression was the opposite of Feng Xin, having only raised a brow, as if ready to spectate a good show. He saw that Feng Xin moved to check on Xie Lian's arm, so he bent to check on Ming Yi and said, So this is the Lord Earthmaster. During that exchange, a number of heavenly officials poured into the hall. The Earthmaster Yi had always been inconspicuous and out of sight, so for many it was the first time they had ever seen his person, and they cluttered around staring at him curiously. The masses were mostly confused, not knowing the reason they were called to the Great Martial Hall, but having collected the Windmaster's merits, they had to come and check things out. Thanks, but I'm alright. It'll get better by itself after a while, Xie Lian said to Feng Xin. Feng Xin didn't mince words either. Watch yourself. Xie Lian uttered another thanks softly, but when he turned around, Lang Qianchu was watching him with a frozen expression. Your Highness Taiwa, what's wrong? He asked. Feng Xin also noticed something off about Lang Qianchu and questioned. Was His Highness Taiwa also injured somewhere? I don't think so. Let me see, Xie Lian said and extended his hand, reaching for Lang Qianchu's brow. Yet, in a flash, Lang Qianchu seized Xie Lian's wrist. There was hesitation on Lang Qianchu's face, as if he discovered something but wasn't sure, but a fire had started burning within his eyes. Xie Lian felt a wave of rage trembling from Lang Qianchu's arm to his. Now all the spectating officials had noticed this strange situation and started whispering amongst themselves. Shi Qingshan and Mu Qing both started to rise and Feng Xin spoke. Your Highness Taiwa, what are you doing? Lang Qianchu finally moved his lips. He only said 2 words, but Xie Lian's heart sank to the very bottom. Head priest. Lang Qianchu gritted his teeth. Xie Lian's pupil shrank slightly. The onlooking officials half-guessed, half-confused, muttering, What head priest? Who's the head priest? Some were more astute and figured it out. Lang Qianchu was the crown prince of Yang'an and the head priest of Yang'an during his time was the second of the double demon masters, the head priest Feng Xin. No one knew of his origin or his real identity. Yet here, Lang Qianchu had Xie Lian in his grip and called him head priest, meaning Xie Lian was the evil that brought ruin to Yang'an, the head priest Feng Xin. However, Xie Lian was the crown prince of Xianle. The Xianle kingdom had fallen in the hands of the Yang'an kingdom, so why would he go and become the head priest of Yang'an? The Crown Prince Taiwa was renowned for his optimism and cheerfulness, never having played mind games nor made things difficult for anyone, and he had never exhibited such an expression. Half despair, half rage, half enmity, half hatred. Lang Qianchu had Xie Lian in a deadly grip, his breathing becoming harsher, and finally said in a strained voice, I killed you with my own 2 hands. Sealed you in that coffin. You, head priest, you are certainly a crafty one. Heavens! It looked like something big was about to go down today. Translator's notes. Shang. Pinyin, Shang, more formal way to say older brother, other than Zhe, but also used informally between male friends meaning brother.